United States Senator Marsha Blackburn is the first woman to serve in the United States Senate from the state of Tennessee. She's also a member of the Armed Services Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, as well as Veteran Affairs, Judiciary, and is a ranking member on Consumer Protection, Public Product Safety, and Data Security Subcommittee. Senator Blackburn, welcome to the Chattanooga Chamber Federal Focus, and sounds like you're pretty busy in DC.
We are busy indeed, and trying to get a few things done here, and of course, paying a lot of attention to what all is going on in the state, talking with our local elected officials, talking with a lot of chambers, and looking at the economic health of our state. I think we're very pleased to learn that during the year of COVID, Tennessee was one of only 6 states in the country that ended up with the budget surplus. And we have been very pleased to see the economic health of our counties, tax revenues being up, money coming into those counties.
Yeah. But last year was definitely a year that many of us won't forget. And speaking of that, could you touch a little bit on just being a legislator in DC during the pandemic, just how that impacted you personally and how you see the country from this moment?
What we did was to just find a new way to continue our contact with Tennesseans. Every year I have visited with each of our counties, either virtually or in person, to make certain that we are meeting the needs of local communities. And during COVID, we did that. Of course, after the pandemic hit, all of our meetings had to be virtually. We're just now getting to the point that we can get back out and actually visit with counties, and are really looking forward to that. Likewise, we're like so many agencies, entities, organizations, and companies that had to find a way to allow remote work. And we were able to do this for our staff that is both in DC and in the state. And then as Tennessee opened up probably a little bit more quickly than some other states, what we were able to do was turn our attention to have more of our staff members in the state, because they were actually able to do in-person meetings and work with Tennesseans.
And touching on that, just as everybody had to go home, last year really showed our reliance on technology, and really the ones that have and the folks that don't have. Could you touch a little bit about your thoughts on where broadband is going to go, and just some of the technologies for people that need basic internet?
Yeah, well, Evan, as you know, the need for broadband really exploded during the pandemic. And as you're also aware, this is something, when I was in the House and now in the Senate, that has been one of my main focuses. How do you close that digital divide? And then how do you make certain that individuals have access to the needed technology? Because you cannot have 21st century economic development, education, healthcare, or law enforcement without access to high-speed internet. Now, during the pandemic, we were really very pleased to see the CARES Act include much of our language for telehealth. And when you talk with your doctors, your healthcare providers, your hospitals, what you're finding out is much of their continuum of care, especially for individuals with complex medical conditions, took place because of telehealth. Then likewise with our schools, we have worked with them as they have sought remedies to be certain that children had access to high-speed internet. Now, some school systems put hotspots on school buses that then would take meals and supplies out to local community centers. You also had some school districts that worked with churches and community centers to make space available for children to come and work either in a fellowship hall or working in a vehicle with their parents in order to get work done. Now, legislatively, recently, my Internet Exchange Act, which will allow these data hubs, it will make it more affordable for districts to put these data hubs that are necessary for broadband expansion in place. That was recently approved and is now in federal law. This is a very solid step. This is bipartisan legislation. Senator Tammy Baldwin and I have worked on this issue, and we're pleased that the Internet Exchange Act has now moved forward to make it more affordable for our systems and our counties to get these internet exchange hubs, these data hubs in place. We're continuing as we look at infrastructure. The number one issue that we hear about from our local and state elected officials is the need for additional funds for internet expansion. And in Tennessee, we have been so very fortunate that our state legislature has put a tremendous amount of funding forward for high-speed internet, for broadband expansion. And then as 5G technologies come forward, for the expansion and utilization of wireless for internet connectivity.
And so along those lines, just a follow-up on that, with the federal infrastructure legislation being talked about, do you see more funding coming down from Washington to the states for broadband?
We are certainly hopeful. Of course, there are different pockets of funding for high-speed internet, whether it is funding through the FCC or funding through rural development for communities that have not had access. This would be for areas that are unserved. We also know that the CARES funding carried forward dollars for high-speed internet connectivity. And then as we talk about infrastructure, there are some of us that are working diligently to make broadband a part of that infrastructure package.
Okay. And I know as a member of the Commerce Committee, I know you're pretty involved in the infrastructure bill. How do you think that the current framework is going, and do you have a timeline or update on that?
We don't have a timeline. There are still talks that are ongoing. I think it is fair to say that there is a view that most Republicans have for a package that deals with your roads and bridges, your runways and airports, your rivers and your waterways, and then your railways, all of which are important to us in Tennessee. To that, we add broadband, which is necessary. And then there are some who would like to put in components of the Green New Deal or money for other things that really we do not consider traditional infrastructure. When I talk to Tennesseans, they want those roads and rivers and rails and runways and broadband. Those are the 5 things that they want to see in an infrastructure bill. So we're continuing to work. I wish I had an update on timing. At this point, we do not.
Okay. And so another big issue, that's been coming up a lot is workforce and how that goes. How do you see the federal government playing a role in workforce, particularly in helping some of the states get folks back to work?
Yes, well, getting people back to work, ending the federal plus up in unemployment is something that Tennessee has already chosen to do. And I am aware that as this has happened, then there have been more people that have elected to go back to work. So we know that is going to help. Likewise, we have seen Congress step in with the payroll protection program, the PPP program. In Tennessee, we had a large number of small businesses take advantage of this program because it allowed them to keep their doors open and to keep people on the payroll during the pandemic. I had legislation that dealt with the EIDL program, and we were pleased to see that take place. That really helped our businesses to separate that idle money from the PPP money when it came to getting that grant to keep the doors open, and then the loan that they would have to meet certain qualifications on how they were going to pay that back or either receive loan forgiveness.
Okay. And also along the lines of workforce, just to talk a little bit on the vaccines and Operation Warp Speed, that's come down from the federal level. What do you feel could be done to address some of the hesitation of folks to get vaccinated?
Yeah, before I talk about the vaccine, let me say this on workforce. Senator Jackie Rosen and I are working together on a workforce training bill that would be for advanced manufacturing. This is something that is important for the East Tennessee, Oak Ridge sort of corridor. You have some components that are there around Chattanooga, some companies that would would benefit from some of these components of the bill. But this would be to assist in training a workforce for advanced manufacturing and employing some of those concepts. Now, this is also legislation that would be important to our TCATs, because we know as more manufacturing comes back to the US, because of some of the China pressures that are out there, having a trained workforce is going to be vitally important. Now, when it comes to vaccines, I tell people to make certain that they are talking to their physician, not to be believing everything they're reading on the internet, but they need to be talking to their physician about the vaccine. I've chosen to get the vaccine, as have other members of my family. We know that there are some individuals who have complex medical issues that their physicians have told them they would recommend that they not receive the vaccine. So this is going to be a question for someone with their healthcare professional who understands their medical conditions or the state of their health.
Okay. And just to switch gears just a little bit, but as you know, we have the Chattanooga Lookouts, and they've been an institution in Chattanooga and in our area for some time. You recently sponsored the Minor League Baseball Relief Act. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I will be happy to. And just this morning, Senator Blumenthal, who is the Democratic lead on this legislation, and I did a segment with CBS News. They're doing a package about this, and I think they're going to actually come to Chattanooga. And what we know is that you have teams like the Lookouts there in Chattanooga that are in different cities around our state. And minor league baseball, these are ballparks that were shuttered during COVID. Now, you had the PPP loan program for small businesses. You had the shuttered venue operator grants for your concert halls and your entertainment venues. But what we realized is that your sporting venues, your minor league venues had been left out of this. Now, the legislation is very narrowly drawn. It repurposes and repositions unused funds from the SBA program, the PPP program, so that minor league ballparks can now apply for that. These are traditionally owned by individuals and their small business operations, and this would allow a ball team to access 45% of a loan that is equivalent to 45% of their 2019 operating venues. And then for vendors that work those ballparks, up to $100,000. Now, these cannot be accessed by any team that is majority owned by Major League Baseball. So it has to go to these small venues and operations like the Chattanooga Lookouts. And these ball teams are a big part of the community. You just mentioned how long they have been there in Chattanooga. And of course, this is a way for families to come and be able to see what pro sports are about, for children who are involved in baseball to be able to watch very talented players. It is a way for kids to be encouraged to dream those big dreams. And these ball teams have different programs. You know, one of the things with the Lookouts is they have the Little Debbie Little Lookouts program, and this is a way to involve children. You have local singers that come in, or choirs, and they do the national anthem. These are doors of opportunity for our citizens. So to open some of these funds that have not been utilized to minor league ball teams that are there in these communities, we think that that's the appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, and we thank you for your support of that and your work on that. Because again, that's very important, as you pointed out, just the different groups that come together locally that normally wouldn't be together are there together at a baseball game. So that's very important. Could you tell us how the business community can better support you in DC?
You know, one of the things that is very helpful to us, and Evan, I will tell you, this is one of the things I so enjoy when I'm able to actually go and visit with people. Recently, in the last, I guess, 2 or 3 months, I did a roundtable with the Chamber's Transportation group, being able to hear what is impacting Chattanooga businesses, what is impacting business in the region. And, you know, when I'm able to sit down and talk with citizens and talk with some of these companies, I hear firsthand how some of the work that is being done in DC is either helpful or is creating some type adverse effect. Maybe it's an unintended consequence. So it is very helpful to us to get that information firsthand.
Yeah. And could you talk a little bit about, I know with most of our folks, you know, we don't really know what was happening in Washington outside of what you see on TV or what's on social media. Could you talk a little bit about just going back to when you were first elected into the House and now being the senior senator of Tennessee? What is your perspective on what's changed in Washington and how's the atmosphere to you?
Well, one of the things that everybody comments on when I'm out and about in Tennessee is they see all the public partisanship and they're going, how do you get anything done? But what they don't realize is there is a lot of bipartisan work that is taking place. I've referenced workforce, I've referenced broadband expansion, the minor league baseball legislation. All of that is being done in a bipartisan way. Likewise, working on electronic health records to better the health care available to our veterans. That is something Senator Tester and I are working on in a bipartisan way. So I think many times people look at what they're seeing on TV and they don't realize that there is indeed quite a bit of bipartisan work being done. One of the differences in representing a congressional district as opposed to the entire state is just the scope and the, being able to keep up with the amount of work. But we have a fantastic team that is there in the state. We have 6 offices. We have everybody out and about. We have caseworkers that are doing the work that comes in where people are needing help with the federal agency. And we're doing our best to stay in contact every single day, because covering the whole state from Mountain City down to Memphis really does take a lot of time in the car.
Yeah, and you truly have a great staff in the state, and that starts from the top, and we appreciate all their work.
Sure.
I have one final question. Just as someone who's written a book, could you give our audience any recommendations on any reading they could do to add to their list?
Yes, there is a book that I started reading during the July 4th weekend. Jason Riley, who writes for the Wall Street Journal, has written this. The book title is Maverick, and it is about one of the most significant economists and public opinion thinkers and influencers of our time, Thomas Sowell. And I would encourage everyone to read that. There is also another book, and this one is a Liz Wiseman book. It's called Multipliers. And it is so significant about the approach you take in leading a team. Are you helping people to multiply and expand their talents, or are you putting people in a situation where you diminish their talents? And that is something for those of us that lead a team, that is important to think about, having the right person in the right slot. And I've really enjoyed reading that book. So those are two of the two that are at the top of my list.
Okay, thanks for sharing those.
Sure.
And again, Senator, thank you so much for all that you do for the state of Tennessee, and you have done and will continue to do. And any way that we can be supportive, please reach out to us, and we're always willing to work hand in hand with you.
I'm delighted to join you, and I would encourage your members to follow us, blackburn.senate.gov. We have a newsletter we send out every single Friday that talks about the things that are going on in DC and how this impacts our state. It also will, when we're getting ready to accept new college students for internships, that information is in there. We have information for parents and for teachers if they're planning trips to Washington. And of course, your members will find us on social media at Marsha Blackburn.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.